Let me start with something that might make your chest tighten a little, because it's true. If someone keeps taking you for granted, it's not because they don't see your value, it's because our silence taught them they could. You don't get taken for granted overnight. It happens slowly, quietly. It happens every time you show up when you're tired, stay when you're hurting, forgive when nothing changes, and explain yourself one more time when your heart is already exhausted. And listen to me carefully. This is not about blame. This is about awareness. You train them to believe that your love comes without limits, your patience has no end, and your presence requires no effort in return. And now they're comfortable. Too comfortable? Here's the hard truth most people won't say out loud. People rarely value what they don't have to earn. You kept giving access while they kept lowering effort. You kept explaining while they kept dismissing. You kept hoping they'd wake up while they learned they didn't have to. And somewhere along the way, you started feeling invisible, unchosen, replaceable. That pain, that ache in your chest, that's not weakness. That's your self-respect knocking. Teaching someone the cost of taking you for granted doesn't start with punishment. It starts with you deciding that your energy, your care, your time are not unlimited resources. You don't need to yell. You don't need to threaten. You don't need to beg to be seen. What you need is courage. The courage to stop proving your worth to someone who benefits from forgetting it. Because the moment you change how you show up, everything changes. Let me tell you something uncomfortable, but freeing. People don't stop caring all at once. They stop trying when they believe your presence is guaranteed. When someone knows you'll stay no matter how little effort they give, effort becomes optional, not because they're evil, not because they plan to hurt you, but because human behavior follows comfort. You became reliable, predictable, always there. And reliability without boundaries gets mistaken for permanence. You answered every call. You forgave every delay. You understood every excuse. And slowly, the relationship shifted, not because you changed, but because you didn't. They learned that your "I'm hurt" didn't come with consequences, that your tears didn't require accountability, that your patience could be stretched without snapping. And I need you to hear this clearly. You didn't lose your value. They lost their awareness of it. When someone feels no risk of losing you, they stop investing in keeping you. And when you keep pouring love into a container with cracks, you end up empty while nothing gets fixed. This is where resentment is born, not from what they did, but from what you tolerated. You start over, explaining instead of being heard, over giving instead of being met, over functioning while they relax into your effort. And then one day, you look at the relationship and wonder, how did I become so easy to ignore? The answer isn't that you weren't enough. The answer is that you made yourself too available to be valued. Teaching the cost doesn't begin with confrontation. It begins with changing the pattern. And that is where your power quietly returns. Somewhere along the way, you learned that being easy made you lovable, low maintenance, understanding, flexible. The one who doesn't ask for much. And at first, that felt like strength. It felt mature. It felt kind. But here's the truth we don't talk about enough. When you erase your needs to keep the peace is built on your silence. You didn't stop needing reassurance. You didn't stop wanting effort. You didn't stop craving consistency. You just stopped asking. You told yourself, it's fine. You told yourself, this is just how they are. You told yourself, I don't want to be difficult. But difficulty isn't the problem. Disappearing is. When you became low maintenance, they became low effort. When you accepted crumbs, they stopped baking bread. And here's the painful part, you helped write that script. Every time you swallowed disappointment, you taught them that disappointment was manageable. Every time you minimized your needs, you showed them your needs were negotiable. Being easy doesn't make someone cherish you. It makes them comfortable overlooking you. Love isn't sustained by how little you ask for. It's sustained by how honestly you show up. Teaching someone the cost of taking you for granted means ending the performance of being fine It means letting your needs take up space. It means understanding that you don't have to earn care by being quiet. The goal isn't to become demanding. The goal is to become visible. Because the moment you stop shrinking to be loved, you force others to decide, rise to meet you, or reveal that they never planned to. Let's clear something up once and for all. Boundaries are not ultimatums. They are not punishments. They are not attempts to control someone else's behavior. Boundaries are simply the invoice for access to you. When someone keeps taking you for granted, it's often because your boundaries were communicated as preferences instead of requirements, soft suggestions instead of firm lines, hopes instead of standards. You said, I don't like that, but you stayed. You said, that hurts me, but nothing changed. So they learned that your words didn't come with weight. Here's what shifts everything. A boundary isn't real until it costs you something to hold it. It costs you comfort. It costs you familiarity. It costs you the illusion that love shouldn't require hard choices. And this is where most people stop, because enforcing boundaries means risking disapproval. It means letting someone feel disappointed. It means allowing them to feel the absence of your constant availability. And that feels terrifying when you've built your identity around being needed. But hear me. Clear boundaries don't push the right people away. They expose the ones who were only benefiting from your lack of them. When you stop answering immediately, they notice. When you stop fixing everything, they feel it. When you stop over, giving the imbalance becomes impossible to ignore. This isn't cruelty. This is clarity. Teaching the cost of taking you for granted doesn't require speeches. It requires consistency. Because boundaries aren't about what you say once. They're about what you stop tolerating every time. And once you hold them, something powerful happens. You stop begging for respect and start requiring it. Let me say this gently, but firmly pulling back is not manipulation when you've been overextending. It's correction. When someone is used to your constant presence, your instant replies, your emotional labor on demand, your absence becomes loud. Even if you say nothing at all, you're not playing games. You're breaking a pattern. You're no longer filling every silence. No longer chasing every misunderstanding. No longer rushing to smooth over discomfort that isn't yours to fix. And that change will be felt. At first, they may be confused. They may ask what's wrong. They may accuse you of changing, of being distant, of not being the same. And here's the truth hidden inside that accusation: you are different. You're no longer operating from fear of losing them. You're operating from respect for yourself. Pulling back doesn't mean shutting down. It means redirecting your energy back to yourself. You stop explaining your worth. You stop auditioning for care. You stop proving that you're enough. And when you do that, one of two things happens. Either they step forward, curious, attentive, willing to meet you where you are, or they stay exactly where they are, waiting for you to return to the version of yourself that asked for less. Both outcomes are information. Teaching someone the cost of taking you for granted doesn't mean demanding they change. It means changing your availability. Because people adjust their behavior when the reward disappears. And the most powerful message you can send isn't a long conversation. It's this: I am still kind, I am still loving, but I am no longer free. One of the hardest things to do when you love someone is to stop cushioning the consequences of their behavior. You've been doing that for a long time. You softened their impact. You filled in the emotional gaps. You made sure the relationship survived, even when they weren't carrying their share. And in doing so, you protected them from ever feeling what it's like without you. Teaching the cost of taking you for granted means allowing the gap to exist, the gap where your effort used to be, the gap where your reassurance once lived, the gap where your patience covered everything. That gap will feel uncomfortable for them and for you. They may feel confused. They may feel irritated. They may suddenly notice all the ways you used to hold things together, and you will feel the urge to rush back in, to explain, to rescue, to make it easier. But pause. Discomfort is not danger. Silence is not abandonment. Distance is not cruelty. It's information. When you stop over-functioning, people either step up or they step out. And both responses tell you exactly what you need to know. If someone only values you when you're performing emotional labor, they weren't loving you. They were loving the benefits you provided, letting them feel the gap isn't about punishment, it's about truth, because real connection doesn't require you to disappear for it to survive. And if the relationship collapses the moment you stop carrying it alone, that's not a failure on your part. That's clarity. You don't teach the cost by explaining it. You teach it by no longer absorbing it. And in that space where you stop rescuing, your dignity begins to breathe again. There comes a moment, quiet but unmistakable, when you realize you've been negotiating things that should have never been up for debate. Basic respect, consistency, consideration. You started bargaining for crumbs because you were afraid that asking for the whole loaf would cost you the relationship. So you softened your language. You lowered your expectations. You convinced yourself that love meant understanding, even when understanding hurt you. But hear this clearly. Love is not proven by how much you tolerate. When you negotiate your worth, you teach people how cheaply they can keep you. You say, this matters to me, and then you stay when it doesn't matter to them. You say, I deserve better, and then you accept the same behavior. Again, that gap between your words and your actions, that's where your power leaks out. Teaching the cost of taking you for granted means closing that gap. It means letting your actions back up your truth. It means choosing alignment over approval. It means deciding that being respected is more important than being liked. This doesn't make you cold. It makes you honest. You are not asking for too much. You're asking the wrong person to do too little. And the moment you stop negotiating your worth, something shifts internally. You stand taller. You speak slower. You react less. Because when you know your value, you don't argue for it, you embody it, and that embodiment is unsettling to people who benefited from your self-doubt. But that's not your problem to solve. Your responsibility isn't to convince someone to treat you better. Your responsibility is to stop convincing yourself to accept less. There's a moment, often unexpected, when they finally notice the change. Not because you announced it, not because you explained yourself, but because the dynamic no longer feels the same. Your energy isn't chasing anymore. Your voice isn't pleading. Your presence isn't guaranteed. And suddenly, the silence you used to fear becomes the silence they can't ignore. They may reach out more, ask questions they never asked before, offer effort that once felt impossible. Or they may grow defensive. They may accuse you of being distant, of changing, of making things complicated. But here's the truth beneath both reactions. They feel the loss of access. This is the moment where clarity sharpens. If their response is curiosity, accountability, and consistency, that's growth. If their response is guilt, tripping, anger, or withdrawal, that's entitlement being challenged. And this is where you must stay grounded. Don't rush to reward temporary effort. Don't soften your standards because they suddenly woke up. Real change isn't loud. It's consistent. Teaching the cost of taking you for granted means allowing time to do its work. You observe. You listen. You watch what happens when the relationship requires effort from both sides, because attention without accountability is just panic. And you are not here to soothe someone's fear of losing you. You are here to see if they are capable of keeping you. This moment isn't about winning them back. It's about finding out who they truly are when access to you is no longer free, and whatever they reveal, believe it. At this stage, something profound has shifted inside you. You stop needing explanations. You stop replaying conversations. You stop waiting for the perfect apology that finally makes it all make sense. Because you realize something powerful, closure, doesn't come from their understanding. It comes from your decision. You no longer chase clarity from someone who was comfortable being unclear. You no longer beg for answers from someone who benefited from your confusion. And this is where your nervous system begins to rest. You understand that if someone truly valued you, they wouldn't need to be convinced after the fact. They wouldn't need distance to discover your worth. They wouldn't need consequences to learn how to care. You also stop romanticizing potential. You stop saying they could be better if. You stop holding on to who they might become instead of who they consistently are. Because love isn't built on hope alone. It's built on behavior. Teaching the cost of taking you for granted means releasing the fantasy that one more conversation will change everything. Sometimes the most self-respecting thing you can do is accept the truth without forcing it to soften. You don't need them to admit they were wrong. You don't need them to validate your pain. Your peace becomes louder than your need to be understood. And in that stillness, you realize you're no longer waiting. You're choosing. Every action you take, every boundary you set, and every no you speak is not just about him. It's about you. It's about valuing yourself enough to demand respect, about refusing to shrink, compromise, or bend to someone who doesn't see your worth. When you finally teach him the cost of taking you for granted, the real lesson isn't just for him, it's for you. It's a reminder that you are the architect of your life, the guardian of your heart, and the champion of your own self-respect. You will feel a sense of liberation, a shift in the air around you, because you're no longer negotiating your value or apologizing for your boundaries. You are whole, unapologetic, and brilliantly alive. And yes, it will be uncomfortable at first. Boundaries always are. But every ounce of discomfort is outweighed by the weight of freedom. Remember this, you cannot teach someone to value you if you do not first value yourself. Your presence, your confidence, and your unwavering self-respect are louder than any words, louder than any plea for recognition. They are the unspoken truth that he cannot ignore. So walk boldly into your life, demand the respect you deserve, teach him not with anger, not with shame, but with clarity, strength, and unshakable love for yourself. And if he cannot meet you there, then let him watch you rise. Because the cost of taking you for granted is simply losing the privilege of being in your extraordinary life. Your life is your power. Protect it. Honor it. Own it.